I find his lack of balance disturbing.
It's all that data, bro. With SLT mega deals, he's got double data for the next 2 months.
Making headlines for First at 9. The UPFA gets its way. Speaker acknowledges former President Mahinda Rajapaksa to be the leader of the opposition. Not all, however, are in favour.
I appeal to the Speaker that the position of the leader of the opposition ought not to be changed.
The former president, let alone being the opposition leader, whether he is a member of parliament has to be decided by a select committee of this house.
In a hurry, MP Malik Samaravikrama wants a precipitate abolishment of the executive presidency.
The events of the last 51 days in our country should leave us in no doubt that the concentration of power in one office is a recipe for disaster.
Identity crisis. 3 parliamentarians of the United People's Freedom Alliance cross over to the government. Falling short. Sri Lanka's economy fails to achieve the expected 3.3% growth rate in the third quarter.
බයික් එකක් ගත්තොත් ෆෝන් එකක්. ඔව්, තෝරාගත් Yamaha බයික් මාදිලි සඳහා රුපියල් 40000ක් දක්වා වටිනා ස්මාර්ට් ෆෝන් එකක් නොමිලේ. ඉක්මන් කරන්න නොවැම්බර් 30 දක්වා පමණයි. කොන්දේසි සහිතයි. අමතන්න 0117 699 699 AMW තින් පමණයි.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamik Eknaik. Now let's start you off with your local stories. The Parliament convened for the first time today after the Supreme Court had delivered the ruling nullifying the President's Gazette notification which dissolved the Parliament. During the session, Speaker Karu Jayasuriya announced that former President Mahinda Rajapaksa will be appointed the opposition leader. Meanwhile, a crossover also took place today where UPFA parliamentarians Lakshmi Appa, Vijit Vijaymunisoiza and Indika Bandaranaike sat with the governing party.
The Parliament was convened for the first time today after the Supreme Court delivered a ruling nullifying the President's Gazette notification which dissolved the Parliament. Before the session began, parliamentarians representing the UPFA held a meeting at the Presidential Secretariat, which was headed by President Maithripala Sirisena and former President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
We have 100 parliamentarians on our side when the governing party has 103. This makes us the biggest opposition in the history. It was the view of the President and the former Prime Minister that we must therefore work together to topple this government.
විපක්ෂ නායක තනතුර ඔබතුමාලා ඒක බලන්න ඕනේ දෙන්න ගිහිලා නේද දැන් ඔබතුමාලාට දැන් විපක්ෂ නායක ඉන්නේ TNA එකත් සහ JVP එකත් සමග එහෙනම් ඉදිරියේදී මොකද TNA එකයි
Both the TNA and the JVP are in the governing party, so there is no problem for me. I'm trying to change the situation where both these parties are standing for the government.
ගන්න තමයි මම මහන්සි ගන්නේ කිසිම අභියෝගයක් නැහැ කිසි ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ ඊට වඩා දේවල් වෙලා තියෙනවනේ නේ.
Meanwhile, the parliamentary group meeting of the UMP was held under the patronage of its leader, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today. Parliamentarian Vijit Vijaymunisoiza was seen having cordial talks with the UMP MPs. The parliamentary session convened at 1 p.m. this afternoon. The Speaker then announced that parliamentarians Lakshman Kiriyalla will be appointed the leader of the House, while Gantha Karunatilaka will be appointed as the Chief Government Whip. The Speaker also announced that former President Mahinda Rajapaksa will be appointed the opposition leader, while parliamentarian Mahinda Amaraveera will be appointed the Chief Opposition Whip. Leader of the House Lakshman Kiriyalla then brought in a legal announcement regarding UPFA parliamentarians who obtained the membership of the SLPP.
As per the sub-article 13 of Article 99 of the Constitution, parliamentarians lose their seats within the House after a month of their resignation from the political party from which they contested for Parliament. So, those who resign from the SLFP will eventually lose their membership in the Parliament after a month of their resignation from the party. 60% of them are members of the SLPP.
I take the view that there are strangers in the House here today and they must be asked to vacate the chamber. But if there is a question of fact to be ascertained, surely the Parliament is competent to ascertain that fact, and we will be moving for an appointment of a select committee to inquire into that question of fact. I appeal to the Speaker that the position of the Leader of the Opposition ought not to be changed until you take these two matters into consideration.
There are 3 examples within this parliament in which the opposition leader was appointed from the same political party as the president. Speaker, did the General Secretary of the UPFA inform you that any of its members had their parliamentary seat revoked? Well then, ask the governing party to mind their own business.
At this point, UPFA parliamentarians Lakshmi Appa, Vijit Vijayamuni Zoisa and Indika Bandaranayake crossed over and took seats with the governing party. Following this latest crossover, number of parliamentarians supporting the UMP increased to 106, leaving only 96 MPs supporting the UPFA. TNA consists of 14 parliamentarians and 6 members are with the JVP, while Venerable Lathurile Ratanathera and TNA MP Shivashakti Anandan act as independent parliamentarians.
As members of the SLFP, myself, Lakshmi Appa and Indika Bandaranayake are supporting the government. There won't be any problem for us to work with the chairman of our party, President Maithripala Sirisena, and advisor Mahinda Rajapaksa. We have an immense responsibility to protect our president, the party as well as the supporters. There are many who joined us later on when I am born an SLFPer. UNP MP Ranjit Bandara and I cannot see eye to eye, but today we are forced together. The SLFP can't move forward or backwards. Our former president gave me a ministerial position in the cabinet. I do respect him for that. But we cannot move forward with dogs and wolves who surround him. I also respect President Maithripala Sirisena because he gave me ample opportunities to work freely by giving me ministerial portfolios. Don't think that I crossed over to the UNP, but I want to help the government for political stability. Meanwhile, an adjournment debate regarding nullification of the executive presidency was also held in Parliament today.
It is safe to say that it has never been clearer why we need to abolish the system of executive presidency. The events of the last 51 days in our country should leave us in no doubt that the concentration of power in one office is a recipe for disaster. Our country's democratic institutions will only be strong if we have a meaningful distribution of power between the 3 branches of the presidency, the parliament and the judiciary. The executive president must go. I call upon all members of this House to vote for this motion and campaign in the country when a referendum is brought in to abolish this executive.
The mandate of the people to abolish executive presidency has been with us for quite some time. But unfortunately, through the 19th Amendment, we were able to do only part of what needed to be done. But it is not only the abolition of executive presidency. The new constitution that has been promised must be brought. That's a promise to the people. And when a new constitution is presented, a solution to the Tamil national question that has plagued this country for 7 long decades, we will have a verdict from our people, not just from people who are numerically in the minority in this country, but from the majority community itself, rejecting these tribal, communal notions and endorsing that everyone in this country is equal and they must have due place and the facility to participate as an equal citizen in this country in all its affairs.
That we should address the issue, the electoral system as well, together with the abolition of the executive presidency. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was seen to suggest that he wants a two-third majority to abolish the executive presidency and install a parliamentary system of governance, whereas his deputy leader, Sajith Premadasa, very openly said, we must contest and we must carry on this government up to next October or September, the full term of His Excellency the President, and conduct the next presidential election and then attempt to win that election. So the United National Party itself appears to be having 2 points of view. And this is a question of some confusion for some of us who are in this coalition. And we must also remember that abolishing of the executive presidency cannot be done without a referendum. The steering committee's report has been finalized and we have tabled it in Parliament and we were to debate it. And we have perhaps come to some understanding with the Tamil National Alliance that by February that we will introduce it to Parliament to attempt to see whether we can have an endorsement of that with a two-third majority in this House. Now there is an issue concerning 3 political leaders in the country. One is Maithripala Sirisena, other is Ranil Wickremesinghe, another is the Honourable Mahinda Rajapaksa. The 3 political leaders are looking at their political future. So this constitution, the abolition of the executive presidency or reintroducing the Westminster system cannot be designed for the whim and fancy of these 3 individuals. I see the former president, I hope he will not become the former member of parliament. I mentioned this morning, there is a serious issue about, let alone being the opposition leader, whether he is a member of parliament has to be decided by a select committee of this house, ultimately. If some of you have pushed him into a serious political debacle. Man who was riding the high wave of popularity has compromised his popularity unnecessarily. I hope he will see some saner counsel soon and be resigned to his fate as an opposition leader in the coming years to come.
They're trying to bring a parliamentary system which is the most unrefined system in the world. If the executive presidency is oppressive, the United States of America should be most affected by this system, but they don't even murmur about it. The issue with this country is the way how they have executed the system. If not for that, the executive presidency has no issues, and this country needs it. What should be done is to amend the Constitution of 1978 and reform the executive presidency. Now, parliamentarians from several parties expressed various views over the change in opposition leader and today's crossovers in Parliament. That, however, did not deter members of the media quizzing parliamentarians on the composition of the new cabinet in the pipeline, especially after some media outlets speculating that portfolio of finance is hotly contested, suggesting former Minister of Finance Ravi Karunanayake being among them.
Well, Speaker has made an announcement. That's it, and it's being taken up again on Friday. But Speaker has made an announcement. As is customary in this country, majoritarianism has prevailed. It's not a question of being sure or unsure.
But Speaker said Mahinda Rajapaksa has been appointed.
But there are some questions that he must not answer. The question is whether Mahinda Rajapaksa will continue to be a member of Parliament.
Mr. Howard also you said that he would press for early parliamentary elections. So what are your comments about that, sir?
We all expect that. Early election.
When? How early?
6 months.
බලාගෙන ඉන්න මොනවද වෙන්නේ කියලා දැන් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ කතා වුණානේ.
දැන් ඔබතුමාලගේ අනිත් පැත්තට දෙනෙක් යොමු වෙච්ච සම්බන්ධයෙන් කොහොමද?
ඒක ඉතින් නිදාස දිනනවානේ. ඒ පැත්තට යන්න හැකි මේ පැත්තට එන්න හැකි. මේ නිදාස දීලා දිනනවා.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා එයාට තනතුරු දෙයිද?
මොකෙන්නේ හේතුවක් නැහැ මම දන්නේ නැහැ.
පුද්ගලයෝ එහාට මෙහාට ගියයි කියලා.
Issues faced by the people will not be resolved just because people jump from one side to the other. If we are to resolve their issues, then a sustainable government will have to be formed by the people's vote. This is something that did not happen for the past 3.5 years. We're not hopeful that it will happen next year either.
ඊළඟ අවුරුද්දක් තුල වෙයි කියලා අපිට හිතා ගන්න පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ.
රවි කරණාට මම දැන් නැවත මුදලාමාර දිව දෙනවා කියලා සඳහන්
Our group held lengthy discussion regarding ministerial positions. Many of them expressed their opinion. The Prime Minister asked who would like to willingly resign because we have to keep the number of cabinet ministers to 30. During this discussion, MP Malik Samaravikrama stood up and said he is ready to resign. A few other MPs too expressed similar sentiment. We hope that when we form the new cabinet, as the deputy leader of the party, Sajith Premadasa, said, right people are appointed to right positions. Whatever people say, this government will not go anywhere. When Ravi Karunanayake is appointed the finance minister, we will see how many others will not accept their positions. If they are that strong, ask the Prime Minister to dissolve Parliament so we can hold elections. Then let's see what happens. UPFA parliamentarian Lakshmi Appa is of the view that the broader alliance the United National Party keeps harping on is just a means to repay the Tamil National Alliance and the JVP for their support to Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe during the recent political impasse. Addressing a media briefing held today, MP Abeyewardene also accused the JVP of wanting to empower the Prime Minister further through the 20th Amendment to the Constitution, in contrast to what the UPFA believes it should achieve. The presidential elections should be announced in September next year. We have a broader alliance with more political parties. They spoke about another front in Goalface yesterday. This alliance will be created for the Tamil National Alliance and the JVP to enter into the government. The Prime Minister announced that this alliance is a way of paying back the TNA and the JVP for the direct and indirect support they gave to protect his premiership. If they show the strength of public support they have with masses at the Goalface, they shouldn't have issues with going for a general election. We won't mind going for an election with their Prime Minister and the Cabinet, and we don't even want a caretaker government. Therefore, a general election is possible before a presidential election. But they should keep in mind that the leader of the Cabinet and the country is the President. The President will not oppose them if they can work well with the President and bring good cabinet papers and not bring proposals which would destroy the country. As the leader of the party, the President asked everyone not to cross over. Based on several reasons, there is an anti-UNP force within the country. If anyone helps the UNP, their future in politics will be in question. That's a part of their first contract to fulfill the needs of the Prime Minister in a different way and further minimise powers of the President. But our 20th Amendment is different. What we want is to strengthen the Parliament. Moving on with other local stories, Sri Lanka Army, in line with President's directives, has decided to release 263 acres of land. Issuing a communique, the Army said that state and privately owned land will be released without affecting the national security. It added that since 2009, they have released 69,000 out of 84,000 acres of land. The communique also went on to say that land in Jaffna, Mannar, Vaunia, Trincomalee and Batticaloa as well as Ampara districts are thus released. Now, the chairman of the Elections Commission, Mahinda Deshapre, reiterates the Commission's intentions to seek the guidance of the Supreme Court over possible action on delayed provincial council elections. Speaking to media following an event held in Galle today, Deshapre highlighted that he fervently hopes the Parliament will take necessary measures to hold these elections before the 31st of March next year. We have to hold 3 national level elections by the 20th of November in 2020. They are the provincial council elections, presidential and parliamentary elections. Provincial council elections have been delayed. We hope that the Parliament will take measures to hold provincial council elections that were supposed to have been held by the 31st of March this year by the 31st of March next year. We're studying provisions to seek the Supreme Court's advice, but we have no intention to file a case before the Supreme Court. Everyone tells us we should do it. We will seek guidance from the Supreme Court, but we cannot seek their opinion on a particular matter. Owner of Perpetual Treasuries Limited, Arjun Aloysius, and its Chief Executive Officer, Kasun Palisena, were further remanded until the 1st of January next year by Fort Magistrates Court. The case was taken up today and the court named former Central Bank Governor Arjun Mahendran, his son-in-law Arjun Aloysius and CEO of Perpetual Treasuries Limited Kasun Palisena as suspects in line with investigations by the CID into the controversial central bank's bond scam on the 2nd of February this year. Aloysius and Palisena were arrested by the CID on the 4th of February. Now, police officers attached to the Chunnakama police station arrested 11 suspects today who had 6 swords in their possession inside a van. Police said that 2 of the suspects are already identified as members of the Awa group. Authorities suspect that the rest of the arrested might also have connections with the group. All of the suspects were later produced before the Jaffna magistrate today. Further investigations are currently underway regarding the incident. We're going to move in for a short break. Stay tuned.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, Sri Lanka's economy grew at an estimated 2.9% during the third quarter of this year, much lower than central bank expectations of 3.3% for the July to September period. Issuing a statement on releasing national accounts estimates for the third quarter of 2018, the Department of Census and Statistics said the agriculture industry, a key component of the economy, grew at a robust 3.3% during the third quarter compared with a contraction a year earlier. Industrial activity too is expected to see positive growth of 1.9%, and service sector grew by 3.9% during the period, the highest contribution to provincial figures. The central bank has estimated overall GDP growth for 2018 at 4.4%. Now, Sri Lanka's Central Depository Systems and China Securities Depository and Clearing Corporation Limited recently committed towards pursuing a cooperative relationship in securities clearing and depository. In a statement today, the Colombo Stock Exchange said the agreement was formalized with the signing of a memorandum of understanding during a visit by China Securities Depository officials to Sri Lanka. CSDC is a non-profit-oriented corporation with Shanghai Stock Exchange and Shenzhen Stock Exchange as its shareholders, each holding 50% equity. According to the CSC, the MOU will pave the way for the 2 depositories to exchange information and expertise on business operating models and other securities market developments. Moving on to the markets, Colombo stocks closed lower today with continued foreign selling in John Keel's holdings helping boost turnover to 979 million rupees. The all-share price index lost 20.15 points, while the more liquid S&P SL20 index closed 14.02 points lower. Foreign investors were net sellers of 784.9 million rupees worth of shares. Now, taking a look at the currency market, the Sri Lankan rupee ended weaker today amid pressure on the currency due to foreign outflows from bonds and stocks as uncertainty from a lingering political crisis weighed on the sentiment. The rupee ended at 180 rupees and 10 to 30 cents per dollar, compared with 179 rupees and 90 cents to 180 rupees in the previous session. Now, let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other currencies in the world. Now, to have a look at news from around the world, the British Cabinet is set to discuss whether the government should ramp up preparations for a no-deal Brexit. It comes after PM Theresa May said MPs would not vote on her Brexit deal until the third week of January. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has tabled a motion of no confidence in May, saying she had led the UK into a national crisis. Number 10 dismissed the motion as silly political games. May is also rejecting calls for a second referendum.
British Prime Minister Theresa May said yesterday that she would bring her Brexit deal back to Parliament for a vote in mid-January, pledging to get assurances from the European Union to break the deadlock over Britain's departure from the bloc. After a last-minute threat from the main opposition Labour Party to call for a symbolic no-confidence vote in the Prime Minister, if no date was given, May said Parliament would debate the deal in January before a vote in the week beginning on the 14th of January.
Discussions with my EU partners, including Presidents Tusk, Juncker and others, have shown that further clarification following the Council's conclusions is in fact possible. So discussions are continuing to explore further political and legal assurances. And we are also looking closely at new ways of empowering the House of Commons to ensure that any provision for a backstop has democratic legitimacy. But I can confirm today that we intend to return to the meaningful vote debate in the week commencing 7th of January and hold the vote the following week. Similarly, 438 current members of this House voted to trigger Article 50 to set the process of our departure in motion, with only 85 of today's members voting against. Now, we must honour our duty to finish the job. I know this is not everyone's perfect deal, but if we let the perfect be the enemy of the good, then we risk leaving the EU with no deal. Another vote which would do irreparable damage to the integrity of our politics, because it would say to millions who trusted in democracy that our democracy does not deliver. Another vote which would likely leave us no further forward than the last. And another vote which would further divide our country at the very moment we should be working to unite it.
A conference celebrating the 40th anniversary of China's reform and opening up was held in Beijing today. One of the major points delivered by Chinese leader Xi Jinping was that his country will not develop at the expense of other nations. Epic achievements that moved heaven and earth are the words used by the Chinese president to describe China's progress over the past decade.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has vowed that his country will not develop at the expense of other nations in a speech marking 40 years since China introduced major economic reforms. He, however, also said that the global superpower would not be told what to do by anyone. Late leader Deng Xiaoping's campaign of reform and opening up began 4 decades ago. The resulting growth has made China the second largest economy in the world. She said despite this growth, China would never see global hegemony, and also highlighted its contributions toward a shared future for mankind. Critics say China continues to crack down on political dissent and take a hard stance against any of ethnic or social instability. Also, in recent years, the country has struggled with mounting debt and slowing economic growth. Xi spent much of his lengthy speech listing examples of China's progress over the past decades, praising them as epic achievements that moved heaven and earth. He said that given its success, no one is in a position to dictate to the Chinese people what should or should not be done. At the same time, he stressed what he described as Chinese efforts to work towards the greater global good, saying Beijing was a promoter of world peace, a defender of international order, and holding a leader role in dealing with climate change.
Now, Twitter has warned of unusual activity from China and Saudi Arabia relating to a bug in a help form. The company said the bug discovered on the 15th of November and fixed the day after could have revealed the country codes of users' phone numbers or if their accounts were locked. Twitter said IP addresses from the two countries had sent a large number of queries in using the form, adding these could have had ties to state-sponsored access. Stressing that they could not confirm intent or attribution for certain, Twitter's statement said that they had informed the authorities about their discovery in the interest of full transparency. We've got sports news coming up on the other side of this break, so stay tuned.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Now that aside, Sri Lankan bowler Lahira Kumari is fined 15% of his match fee and is given 1 demerit point after being found guilty of a level 1 breach of the ICC Code of Conduct during the third day's play in the first test against New Zealand in Wellington yesterday. The Sri Lankan bowler was found to have violated Article 2.3 of the code, which relates to use of an audible obscenity during an international match. Kumari used an audible obscenity after an outside edge off Tom Latham's bat in the 96th over went for a boundary. These comments were heard by the on-field umpires as well as picked up by the stump mic. Level 1 breaches carry a minimum penalty of an official reprimand, a maximum penalty of 50% of the player's match fee and 1 or 2 demerit points. And that's all we have from Other Than 24/7. And before we go, we'd like to take you to Kaluamodara near Bentota. The area surrounding Kaluamodara features a number of natural spaces with picturesque landscapes and local flora and fauna. This small town is also a hub for water sports lovers. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.